All right, so you'll see example 2 here says using the distributive property to multiply rational numbers. So now we're going to focus on the other important property, the distributive property. Now it says rewrite the mixed number as a sum, then multiply using the distributive property. Well, I'm going to get this started if we weren't using the distributive property. I would have to go -6/1 times 5 1/3. And then, since we're multiplying, I need to change this to an improper fraction. So I'd have to go 3 times 5 plus 1, which would be 16/3 times -6/1. And I'd have to keep going with that. I know that's not fun, okay? As I'm dropping my pen here. I know that's not fun. I know that's not what we want, not what we don't want to do. So let's rewrite it as a sum. What does that mean? Well, I'm going to rewrite this as -6 times. Now this 5 1/3 here, what does that mean? That means 5 plus 1/3. 5 plus 1/3, and then I can use the distributive property. I can go -6 times 5. Well, a negative times a positive is going to be a negative, and 6 times 5 is 30. Okay, so far, like this way better than that. And then I can go -6 times -6 times 1/3. Well, a negative times a positive, put my plus sign in here, is going to be a negative. Now, if you can't do that, what's 1/3 of 6 in your head, you can go, okay, 6/1 times 1/3, and that 6 times 1 is 6, 1 times 3 is 3, and I get 6 divided by 3, even though it doesn't look like a 3. 6 divided by 3, and that works out to be 2. Okay. Well, negative 30 plus -2. This is not a negative plus a negative is a positive. Think of the number line. If I go down to negative 30, and then I go down 2 more, I'm still at a -32. That is so much easier than trying to figure this out. Would we get to the same answer? Absolutely. Way easier rewriting it using the distributive property. Okay, so let's do the same thing over here. I want to rewrite this as 9 times. Now we have a -3.5. So this is -3 plus a -1/2. Remember, if this is the mixed number is a negative, both the whole number and the fraction have to be negative. Use your distributive property. 9 times a -3, positive times a negative is going to be a negative. 9 times 3 is 27. Plus sign, plus sign. Now we're going to go 9 times a -1/2. Well, positive times a negative is going to be a negative. And I'm going to rewrite that. Like, what's half of 9? Half of 9 is 4.5, right? Because half of 8 is 4, half of 10 is 5. So this would be a -4.5. Okay, and again, if you didn't know that, you could figure it off to the side. Okay, so let's keep going. This is -27 plus, let's break this down again. Let's break this down into -4 plus a -1/2. Remember, again, breaking apart those mixed numbers actually makes problems easier for us, because then I can go, what's -27 plus -4? Negative plus a negative is going to be a negative. That's -31 plus a -1/2. And again, since they're both negative, let's just put them back together. -31.5. Okay? Again, think of picture number lines if need be, okay? If you're going down to -31, you're going down another half, you're at a -31.5. Okay? Again, we could do it by making them into improper fractions and all that fun stuff, but I think this is a little bit easier. Okay, so notice both of these, we expanded our mixed number and used our distributive property. Well, now we want to be able to think of it as a distributive property in reverse. Okay, here's what I mean. Evaluate using distributive property. Doesn't look the same. Okay, it doesn't look the same, and I get that. But notice these both have 16 times. Okay? This term over here has 16 times. This term over here has 16 times. So if you think of some of the stuff we've done, like in our warm-ups and our power standards, we can pull out a common factor. I can divide out 16 out of each term. So I can divide a 16 out of this. Make sure I don't go too far, because there's my plus sign. And I can divide a 16 out of this. Okay? So if I divide I'm going to pull a 16 out, right? If I'm pulling a factor out. And I'm left with -3/8 plus, pull a 16 out of here. Ooh, try to not draw your line too weird. And then I'm left with 1/4. Okay. Now I know we don't like to deal with fractions. I get that. But this fraction actually works out to be a little easier. Okay, this didn't look fun over here. So just stick with me for a second. I know that to add fractions, I have to have a common denominator. Well, if I look at both 8 and 4, they both go into 8. So this is a -3/8 plus, I can rewrite this out of 8 by multiplying the bottom by 2. If I multiply the bottom by 2, I have to multiply the top by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay? And this works out to be 16 times, same denominator, so I'm going to have 8 on the bottom. -3 plus 2 is a -1. And then I'm just basically going, put a 1 underneath, and I'm going 16 times a -1 is -16. 1 times 8 is 8. What's -6? Oh, I'm sorry. Negative divided by positive is a negative. 16 divided by 8 is 2. All of that to get that whole -2. Okay? So there's two ways you're going to use a distributive property in your homework. Okay? One of them, you're going to break apart the mixed number, rewrite it as a sum. The other way is you're going to kind of pull that common factor out so you can write it like you would use a distributive property, but instead just add together what's in your parentheses.